Small diversion from the regular programming today. We're going to have a look at the EAZYRC 1/18th scale 80 series Landcruiser. Let's check it out. It's branded Patriot for whatever that's worth. That over there. What I wanted to do was to see how this compares to the C44 KM that I'm building. That's a 1/16 scale, but this being 1/18, I'll shut that. This being 1/18 scale, they're going to be similar. So here's what's in the box. You're seeing this for the first time, same as me. Right, for comparison. Here's the C24 for comparison. 1/16 scale, 1/18 scale. 1/24 scale. So there's a comparison in size. Okay. There's very little information about this on the website. The tyres are in desperate need of foams. There's nothing in there, they're empty. I understand it's a 9-gram servo and there's a teeny tiny oh no, it's long, so that'd be a 280 motor. Little teeny thing in there. That's actually, I've got a stumpy version. This was custom built by someone on the forums, this motor, but it's the same size motor. This will have more torque, unfortunately for this thing, but it doesn't weigh all that much. I had the stats here, 445 grams it reckons. These side stickers are pretty cheap, they'll come off, probably a good thing. There are LEDs in the fronts. Let's see how the body comes off. Is it screwed in? They often are. I could read the instructions, mind you. It's quite a pretty radio, actually. Full points for packaging. I mean, almost. It's a shame that it's plastic. It's one thing about this hobby that I'm a little unsure about. I don't like having all this plastic. I'll recycle this. That's a really cool mold there. You can see the shape of the truck. I will recycle that, but it would be better if it hadn't been made in the first place. Full points to the places. I think the definitely Red Cat has a lot of cardboard in their packaging, which is a good thing. So this is quite an attractive radio. You've got digital instead of dials for steering and throttle trim. It is literally just a hollow cheap wheel. This is listed at 150 Australian dollars. It's probably like 130 American, 120, 130. There's a screw in the bottom, but I understand it takes 2 AA's, not 4. There's reasonable movement. On-off switch on the side. That will be a hollow antenna just for decoration, very likely. Look, it's 2.4 gigs, so that's a good thing. So size comparisons. C24 to the EAZYRC 1/18 scale. 1/18 scale, 1/24 scale. I'll line their back wheels up to give you an idea of size difference. And lastly in the packet we have a USB charger, a 380 mAh LiPo battery with a standard balance plug and a regular one of the JST connectors. The charger charges on the balance plug, and that's that. You even get a metal wheel hex tool, which is pretty decent, honestly. So it's coils all round. That's probably what we should talk about. links of plastic, and I see it's got an EAZYRC sticker on it. It'll be a 9-gram servo. If we're very lucky, it'll be metal geared. Not always a good idea to force a servo, but I tell you what, that is really plush. Not all servos are like that. Sometimes they're chunky. This is a high torque, high-tech, high-torque servo. This guy's, I'm not even going to try that on the WPL. Again, you get what you pay for. This thing's worth quite a bit more than that. That, I think I paid 36 Aussie delivered, and they're usually around $45 for the RTR. Okay, so the battery goes under the hood, or the bonnet if you're in Australia. Now sometimes you've got to lift the back of the moulding. There we go, there we go. It's got a second battery, which I'd know if I'd done my research before this video. So it comes with two 7.4 volt, 380 milliamp hour batteries, unshielded electronics. The SCX-10 has a, no sorry, the Spectrum DX5 rugged radio, which we'll review soon, has a conformal coating over the electronics. That's basically, it's usually silicon, but sometimes it's some other material, but usually it's like a silicon spray. It's kind of like Plastidip, and it completely coats, or sometimes it's a resin, completely coats the electronics. So, I don't know if you can see that, but the electronics board is in there and exposed. Heat shrink is sometimes a viable way to protect electronics, but if you pulled this out completely, sprayed it with a conformal coating, which you can get in a can, that would effectively give you some protection against driving in showers. The servo is unlikely to be waterproof, but you could drop a waterproof one in easily enough. Power HD makes the TR4 servo. Servo spline size can be an issue, and these smaller servos typically have the smaller size, so this may not fit the servo horn, but that's okay, you could replace the horn. So there are Metal Gear waterproof servos available. This is about $20. It's intended or marketed, I mean with the name TR4, it's marketed for the TRX4 shifting servos, and it comes with a bunch of little arms. So you could actually replace this servo with a waterproof one, hit the PCB with conformal coating. The motor's fine, batteries are fine, they're completely submersible. You can get lipos wet. So that will work just fine. You could waterproof this thing for deep water crossings, no worries. Then your only problem would be reception. And there's your antenna. It perks up out of the PCB, I hope you can see that. If that's underwater, the 2.4 gig frequency won't penetrate the water and then you'll lose signal. So you could help yourself by lifting that. Your battery will sit in behind it, and then that's about as good as you'd hope for. So that's a pretty nice kit. I can see there's LED lighting to the rear as well. Don't know if you can see that through the windows. I hope so. This will light up and be quite attractive. I don't see wiring to the roof, so it's, yeah, these spotlights, oh, clearly there are no LEDs here, but they're ready to take LEDs. You could actually install them if you wanted. They're the snap-in type, so you can buy a pack of multicolored LEDs for, you know, $10 or so from the usual places. You could stick yellow, now they're the 3mm, not the 5mm, you could stick yellow LEDs in, or white ones. These guys run at 3 to 3.3 volts, and the yellow ones run at, I think it's 2.4 volts. So you'd want to measure the power coming out of the PCB there, find a line and you can run it up. But if you put these in 2 pairs in parallel in series, then so it'll take 6.6 volts. So it's daisy chain one to the next, and then copy that and then put those 2 sets of wiring in parallel. You'll have a 6.6 volt light array that can run straight off the output, which is probably going to be 5 or 6 volts. So that is a possibility for down the track. Now the claimed charge time of this is 3 hours, and the claimed run time is 15 minutes. Thankfully these days with the electronic speed controls, you only use what power you ask from the throttle. The old speed controllers of the 80s and 90s, it was a mechanical speed control, and you only had a couple of steps from neutral, forward and reverse. Once you plug it in, it had this big ceramic resistor, and the power would go straight into the resistor unless you used the power through the throttle, which would give you, the servo would move across the contacts. So whenever you weren't using the power into your drivetrain, the power would still be flowing 100% full speed into this thermal resistor, into this ceramic resistor that would get really, really hot. So it was inefficient, and you had a guaranteed run time of 6-7 minutes, whatever it was, from your NiCads, whether or not you used the throttle. We're spoiled these days. The electronics these days are amazing. So the electronic speed control is brilliant because it uses MOSFETs, switching transistors basically, that let you only take what current you need from the battery when you ask for it on the throttle. So although this says 15 minutes, with a 380 milliamp hour battery, a battery that's nicer than these, because this says 5C, at least it's honest. That's a very low grade battery, if that's accurate. I would expect half an hour runtime out of this thing, depending on the drivetrain and the gearing and how you drove it. This is not going to be a fast car. This is actually going to be something of a crawler. It's really going to need some foams in those tires, but getting that right, maybe some weights, maybe some solder you could run on the inside of the wheels. This could be an alright performer, actually. Anyway, we'll get it out on the trail, and we'll see how it goes. Talk to you in a minute. Winter is here, it is windy, and I'm hoping you can hear me. We're back to the EAZYRC 118 scale Landcruiser 80 series. I've never driven it. You're going to see its first time here. I've charged one of the two 5C 2S batteries. 5C means a potential of 5 times the 5 times the milliamp hour, the capacity in constant discharge. So it apparently can do 1.5 amps, that's pretty low. I've charged it, my little balance tester says it's at 4.1 and 4.15, that was from the included USB charger. 3 AA's, not 2, just to note. I thought it was 2. Now you don't need to stick the screw in that, that's a bit silly, but there's the controller. Battery goes in the front here. You can squeeze the bonnet to open it and it'll come out a bit more easily. Now I have a few of these connectors, and you can actually reverse the polarity of them, but don't. I always just check to make sure I've got the right polarity. Alright. Now I see a switch on the PC board, that's the on-off switch. Make sure the antenna's out of the way of the power cables, and we'll shut that bonnet, or hood if you're on the other side of the world. I should have had the remote on first. Okay, it's got precious little in the way of adjustments. We only have trim, we don't have dual rate. So that's, let me show you this. That's the maximum throw of the servo, but it goes a lot further. So you really don't want to go further. You want to pay attention when you're driving, otherwise you will cook the servo. It's alright. It's not going to have a lot of torque. This motor's probably too small for this rig. I do note that it has indicators. They're not actually in the indicator spot. On the 80 series you've got 2 headlights and indicators on the side, but they've stuck the indicator in the headlight spot. It'll light up when it goes forward, I guess. And it puts the brakes on to reverse. So, this is the EAZYRC 80 series Landcruiser. Now I mentioned before in the unboxing, sorry about the wind noise here, it has no foams in the tyres, but that may not be a big deal because the tyres aren't soft enough to compress anywhere. It's also geared far too high for crawling.
Now, most of my involvement with this hobby is around crawling rather than trailing. When I'm testing, I do love to go trailing with friends, but as far as being a crawler, this is not so much ideal. Now, to get this back on its wheels, if we aim up at the sky and reverse, there's half a chance. Aim down and go forward, or aim up and reverse. There you go. But there's no driving out of this. One more go. But I just thought we'd try the crawling first. If you wanted this as a crawler, you might consider looking into if you can change the gearing, or putting a motor with more turns. I note there's probably very little drag brake, but from the scale of this little thing, I think you could actually make it into a fairly capable little rig. Another trick would be to run solder around the wheels underneath the tires. That will weight them without needing to spend without needing to spend much. Solder is cheap. Use the thicker solder. Sometimes it's referred to as plumber's solder. Not the really thin gauge electronic stuff, but a mil or two if you can get it. Now, one thing I should remind you of is here with the controller, I'm being very, very careful, because if I steer further than what it can actually do, we'll cook the servo in no time. We are being pretty mean to this little truck. It's not a rock crawler. Let's take it somewhere more appropriate. Alright, I've decided to bring this to where we drove the WPL C24 the other week, or the other day. This is a much friendlier little bit of terrain. We're going to follow this little dugout that my son made about 2 years ago. And it's a bit worse for wear now, but it makes a really nice adventure course for a little scale truck. We are driving with one hand here. Now, it was a boulder. You wouldn't usually drive over that in real life. Why don't we see if we can go over this little bridge? Let's see how it ascends. Because it's a great way to cook this servo, because the radio doesn't give us dual rate, which lets us limit the travel, or lets us limit the input sent to the servo rather. Look at that, made for it. See how the side hills not well. Got caught up on the diff. That side hill's alright, honestly. Okay, so I think when we come back to this little rig, we're going to try and give it some more weight down low. Possibly change the radio, if I can be bothered, to an all-in-one system that gives us control. But look, it drives really nicely. It's geared too high for crawling. It's geared too high for careful trailing, honestly. If we could lower the gears a little bit, that'd be lovely. But it's super pretty. And I will say this, the controls are very responsive. The radio is comfortable in the hand. So the controls are quite responsive. It would benefit from some weight on the corners. The motor is up to the task, but it's geared too high. The steering could be stronger. The radio is basic and would really benefit from dual rate. But otherwise, this is a fun little machine. So we'll see if we can make it a little bit more fun. Sorry about this wind noise. We'll see if we can make it a little bit more fun in coming weeks with perhaps gearing it down, improving the steering, and we'll see what we can do with it. This is the EAZYRC 1/18 scale Landcruiser 80 series. There'll be a link for it below, and if you have any questions or if you'd like to see me do anything with it, leave a comment. Thanks for watching. Look at that, made for it.